You know what? Windows Phone's growing. It's getting quite a bit of support from a lot of people, and Nokia is joining the fray now with the Lumia 710 in the US. What's going on, guys? I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and this is coming to T-Mobile, but it's coming just before CES. So the question is this a device to get? Should you hold off for some of the Windows Phone devices that are probably going to be announced even by Nokia at CES? We're going to find out in the review and get some more in-depth insight as to whether this is the device to get on T-Mobile in the full review. But first, some love to Best Buy Mobile. When you go into Best Buy Mobile, they'll help you set up your email, your web, your phone settings, and more. So when you walk out that door, you're working. It's walkout working, and it's only available at Best Buy Mobile. So can this 1.4 gigahertz little mid-range device compete? Or should you go with something else on T-Mobile? Or should you wait and see what happens at the Consumer Electronics Show? We're going to find out in the full review of the Nokia Lumia 710, which starts right now. So look, it's not the highest end smartphone in the stable, but it's Nokia's entry into the US. Here's the Lumia 710. We saw this last year at Nokia World in London, in late October. And so this is the 710. The 800 also came out, and you're seeing it in several countries around the world. Not in the US just yet, but it's interesting because, originally Nokia was like, well, we're going to have a specific strategy for the US. You'll see more of that in 2012. So it was kind of unexpected a little bit when they came out and said, well, the Lumia 10, or 710 rather, is coming to T-Mobile. But here it is. It's a mid-range device. And I'm going to be honest with you, you look at Windows Phone on the high end in comparison to Android and iOS, and a lot of people tend to overlook it just because it's new, it's in its infancy, and when you compare the high-end specs to Android or iOS, two OSs that are a little bit more fleshed out, it can be oftentimes challenging to make that buying decision between the three. Now, on the mid-range front, what I love about Windows Phone, and if you read my first impressions, you know this, what I really like about Windows Phone is that you go in and you get a consistent experience. So yeah, the camera's a little bit different here. 5 megapixels, for example, versus 8 on some of the higher end devices. This obviously doesn't have a front-facing camera, but in terms of performance, you get a really consistent experience here across the board. It's got a 1.4 gigahertz processor, which is right almost on par with all the other Windows phones. So regardless of whether you have the Titan or the Lumia 710 or the Lumia 800, you're getting a pretty consistent experience across the board, as opposed to like a 600 megahertz processor in Android 2.2 on a mid-range device. So I think in the mid-range, this is one of the best devices you can get on T-Mobile along with the Radar 4G. But let's do a rundown of specs here. Lumia 710, available on the 11th at T-Mobile. It's going to be available in black and white, and it's going to retail for $49.99 with a 2-year agreement after a $50 mail-in rebate. Now, it's packing a 1.4 gigahertz single-core Snapdragon processor, a 3.7-inch WVGA ClearBlack display with ClearBlack technology, if you will. That's Nokia's kind of term for their display. And then you have a 5 megapixel camera here that shoots video at 720p, and Windows Phone 7.5, which is Mango. So again, you get a smaller display here. Obviously the build quality is a little bit different. I think Windows Phone tends to focus more on hardware over software rather, and the overall experience over hardware. So you can see, when you go to the high end here, and I actually said that wrong. I mean, you look at the Titan, for example, and you see, high-end Windows Phone here, metal build quality, big display. Over here, smaller display, plastic build quality, but same performance. I really don't see a performance difference in between the 710 and the HTC Titan, for example. So you get a good performance here, and out of the box, you do get some T-Mobile installed applications. You get T-Mobile's My Account, you get Netflix out of the box, and then you get T-Mobile TV. Now, Nokia pre-installs some stuff as well. You get Nokia Drive out of the box. Maps you have to order, or download rather, through the marketplace. So it doesn't come out of the box, but you can get that through the marketplace. So that's something I've really criticized Windows Phone for. I'm like, they don't really have a great Maps application, Drive does fantastic stuff because you can do navigation stuff from your phone. Maps is fantastic because it, goes up against Google Maps, and Nokia has a great history in the navigation department. And then you can see TuneIn Radio. I also downloaded that one myself. But the Nokia's We Care comes out of the box also. The rest of the stuff I've downloaded or applications out of the box, like ESPN, which is a Nokia thing that comes out of the box. Xbox Live, obviously, on the Microsoft side, and then Microsoft Office also, obviously, on the Microsoft side. Let's take a look at messaging on this device and see, 3.7-inch display is a little bit on the small side for some, maybe perfect for a few. Let me get rid of these. Actually, we'll do this. I'll tell you what, here's a Galaxy Nexus. So, set a picture of the Altoids can on my desk, or Altoids 10, if you will. So we'll say the Quick Brown Fox. We'll do the Quick. You can see it's a little bit harder to type on because of the smaller display. Now, you can use it in portrait or in landscape, and again, I can't get over this, mid-range device. Keep this in mind. Mid-range device, you're getting a very consistent performance here for $50. You compare this to like an Android phone that's $50, it's going to have like a 600 or an 800 megahertz processor, probably an older version of Android as well, which is fine if you like Android, but I think in comparison you get a better bang for the buck over here. So Quick Brown Fox is happy to see the weekend. Actually happy to see 2012. How about that? 2012. And you have your emoticon button there. And then you can see down here you have your shortcuts along with your capacitive buttons, back, menu, and are actually physical buttons, sorry, back, home, and then search. So these are physical, which is particularly interesting because we've always seen capacitive buttons on Windows Phone devices. It's kind of interesting to see physical buttons there. And then, like I said, your buttons down here, your on-screen buttons. Now you have send, attach, and speak, for example. So if you're ever in a menu and you're like, I'm not quite sure what these buttons do or what they stand for, because hey, it just shows an image. All you have to do is pop up these little, beside these little three dots, and you can see it brings up the text below, along with some additional menu stuff like delete thread and more. So messaging looks great, you know, and you can come back in here and easily pick back up and say, hey there, for example. And you can see again, portrait to landscape transition is very good. One little pet peeve I have with Windows Phone, it's continued over into Mango. You can't keep the battery life indicator and the signal strength indicator on the display. You're going to see it pop away in about a second here or two, and it'll go back up into the display. Well, there's no option to leave it on the display, and for me, I need that because there are oftentimes I'm in either a dead spot or a spot with, you know, not fantastic coverage or less than perfect coverage, and it's nice to know that along with the battery. Now again, this is a smaller one. I would like to know the battery percentage, but hey, that's just me. That may not affect you at all. And the signal strength thing may not affect you at all either, but I would like to have at least the option to keep that on the screen. Now here you see what Microsoft calls Metro UI. Now it's designed after subway tiles, and you can see here that it's got kind of a tiled appearance to it, and again, very fast. Then you got your applications. You can either click here or flip back and forth like that. Now, again, this shows that the OS is still very much in its infancy, because when you look at this, you see, for example, messaging as a square tile, you see calendar as a rectangular tile, pictures as a rectangular tile, maps, for example, is a square tile. Well, you can't change that over in the settings. There's no way for you to actually change, you know, it's auto-dictated by the operating system. So when you put messaging on the home screen, it comes up as a square, and I can really see a case here for maybe customizable tile sizes, for example, because messaging, you know, I should be able to expand that out, and maybe I could see a preview of my messages, or expand phone out and see a preview of who's called me, and maybe my recent calls, for example. I can see a lot of use to that. When you have a calendar appointment, for example, it shows up right here in the dead space. So I can see use for that for email as well, you know, messaging, phone, and it's kind of disappointing that you can't do that on the, or at least in this build of Windows Phone right now. Now themes you can change. You do get a little bit of a customization choice. You can change it from dark to light, or you can change it back, and then of course you can change the accent colors as well. So you can do lime, for example, and come back and change your accent color. So still not a lot of customization in comparison even to iOS, and especially to Android with all the personalization choices you get there. You do get the ability to have a wallpaper on the device, and you can see, I mean, we're all kind of fatties at heart, right? So I put cupcakes on the Lumia 710 because apparently I was just craving cupcakes. But you get notifications down here like a voicemail, for example, or an email, or a missed call, or messaging along with the time. You can just swipe it up. But outside of that, you don't see the wallpaper. So I'd like to see at some point, maybe instead of having a black space behind all these tiles, maybe the wallpaper. And same thing over here, have the wallpaper behind the applications over here in the little drawer, if you will. So what Mango does introduce is live tiles. You're going to see the Charlotte tile along with the people tile here. Flipping around, if I had more contacts, you'd see live pictures of my people, but you can see the Charlotte menu flipping around. You're going to see the weather pop back, and all of this is real time. It's called live tiles, and it's something that's new to Mango, and you can control. Unfortunately, there's really no way to control the live tiles from a centralized settings place. You know, you can come into applications, for example, and I can come down here and say, you know, people, and I can do, you know, my individual settings for people, but there's no real option to say set all tiles as live tiles, at least so far that I can find. You know, you have to individually go into the applications, for example, Weather Channel, and we'll come in here and take a look, and you can see I have to set the live tile setting from the actual application itself. So some great improvements to Windows Phone, particularly in Mango, but little things like this where I'm like, it's kind of fragmented, where I have to go into settings here itself and go into like weather backgrounds turned on, but then let me find the live tile option here. I believe it's over in, yeah, I believe it's over here somewhere. And you can see show live tile, and I can update it every 30 minutes, hour, 2 hours, but I have to have that set in order to see the live tile. So there's no universal setting that I can find on the actual device itself. You know, kind of frustrating, but again, definitely an OS that's in its infancy, but is doing a great job and is receiving more market share as time goes on. And hopefully with CES 2012 right around the corner, we can see, man, it sounds weird to say 2012. 2012 right around the corner, we can see some new 4G LTE enabled Windows Phone handsets, which is what they need to kind of take off. So you can see the build quality here, nothing spectacular, especially when you look at like the HTC Titan or the Nokia Lumia 800, kind of the bigger brother to the 710. You can see a plastic battery door here. You've got your micro USB charging port up top, your 3.5mm headphone jack here, and your power button. Nothing at the bottom except for a lanyard hole, and then your camera shortcut button over here, volume rocker over on the right side as well, and nothing on the left side. So it fits well in the hand. 3.7-inch display, again, maybe on the small side for some, but it's pretty decent for most. And it's even bigger than the iPhone. So hey, that seems, considering the popularity of the iPhone, that's okay to me. 4G connectivity here. It does support T-Mobile's HSPA Plus 14.4 megabits per second standard. So theoretically, you could see speeds as fast as 14.4 megabits per second. You're never going to see those. That's a theoretical peak. I have seen speeds, though, between about 2.1 megabits per second and roughly 4 megabits per second on the download. So you can see pinch to zoom, very responsive in the browser. But again, if you're a media buff, you like watching videos on your phone, you like surfing the web on your phone, the display here is going to be a little bit too small for you in comparison to some of the other Windows phones on the market, like the HD7S or the HTC Titan. So you can see your pinch to zoom, very responsive, landscape transitions incredibly fast, and you don't get flash support out of the box. So, for example, on our site, you don't see the advertisements displaying, but flash is still kind of commonly used, even though it's dying out. It's still very commonly used in a lot of different places, and that, would have liked to have seen that, but alas, you don't get that here. But, just performance, incredibly smooth and responsive with a great transition effect back and forth, and then, of course, the ability to add tabs pretty easily. And then I can come back down here, and you'll notice the browser bar here is down at the bottom of the display. But again, press those little 3 dots, and all you have to do is press those and come down here, and you can see additional settings in the browser. So I can go back to my tabs, jump back to Phone Dog, and it's quick and easy. And if you'll notice, for a $50 device, it's very fast as well.